Hello, I'm Joe Nutkins and I'm here to talk about preventing separation anxiety with your puppy or dog during a time like we've got now where we have restrictions and we are at home a lot more than normal. So the reason why I'm doing this is I can anticipate that because there are a lot more people at home at the moment and potentially more people going to be at home, and it's going to be for many weeks if not months, there is the potential for a lot more dogs to develop separation issues, and then everyone will need to then start going back to work, and suddenly we're going to have a lot of dogs that are stressed and having a lot of difficulties. So to try and help prevent that from happening, I am doing a webinar now about preventing separation anxiety and try and give you some work that you can be doing while you're at home with your dogs to help ease the change where we then all need to go back to work and school and things like that. Okay, so separation anxiety, when I'm talking about that, what I mean is it's where a dog can't understand how to cope with being away from either a particular person or from every member in their household. They can't cope with being left on their own, basically. Okay, so it might be when everyone goes out, it might be just that they can't reach another person in the house. It doesn't have to only be when people are leaving the house, it might be that actually they just can't reach you. And often you'll get at least one of a few specific symptoms. You sometimes get more, but often you'll get one of them. So it might be that your dog does a lot of barking and makes a lot of noise when you leave the house. And often the only way you'll know is that your neighbour tells you that actually every time your dog goes out, they bark for most of the time you're not there, which obviously isn't ideal for your dogs. It might be that they actually cause destruction. So by that, it could be that they're chewing the sofa, that they're digging up the doormat or the carpet area where the door is, that they're actually chewing skirting boards and chewing chair legs and things like that. And what it is, it's partly to try and get out, to try and find you, and partly because while they're chewing, while they're doing these digging actions, it just helps to release a little bit of hormones that helps them to calm back down just for a split second, so then they have to do it continuously. And the other thing that often they'll do is they will toilet. Okay, so it might be they wee, it might be they poo, they might do both. Often it will be somewhere near to where you've left, so it would be something by the front door, which is great when you walk back in, but not always. It can be anywhere, and again that's just because they're stressed, because they can't reach you, and so something has to happen and they can't control it because they're so stressed, so then they end up going to the toilet. So often when we are asked about toileting issues with a dog and we find out a bit more about what's going on, and it turns out it's pretty much always during the day when their owner's out, actually it's more likely to be a separation issue than it is just a typical toilet training issue. Okay, so separation anxiety is really common. It's one of the most common reasons that dog behaviourists are asked to help people. It's something that can be affecting puppies and adult dogs and senior dogs. It doesn't matter your breed. If you heard that, that was one of my dogs. I do apologise. If any breed can get to it, some breeds can be more prone than others, but it can literally be any dog can develop separation issues. Okay, and it can be at any time of their life. However, if you've got a dog that's had separation issues in the past and you've worked on them, they are more likely to get it again sometime in the future if the situation arises. Okay, so just to bear that in mind as well. So the main cause of separation anxiety often is the changes. So it can be little changes, but certainly big changes will often trigger separation issues. So it can be that perhaps their owner's been off sick for a few days or a few weeks, so the dog's used to being there and their routines become different, and then the person's well again, so they go back to work and the dog thinks, well, what's changed, what's different there? It could be moving house, so actually everything's different, and it might be that actually you're not spending extra time at home, but the big difference is that the house has changed and the layout's changed and everything's different, and that can be enough to trigger a separation anxiety. It can be that you change your hours, that normally you go from day shift to night shift. It could be that you've increased your hours, or you might even have reduced your hours somewhat, and then because of that change it causes anxiety for your dog, and then that becomes separation anxiety. So the cause of it can be so many reasons. It just needs to be a change of some sort a lot of the time. Often the dogs that we see the most with separation issues aren't necessarily dogs that are left alone all day while their owners are at work. Actually, a lot of the time it's dogs that haven't got to be left at all. So they are used to having someone at home, and then when people then need to go out and go and do their shopping, or they take on a part-time job perhaps, they're out for a couple of hours a day, suddenly their dog doesn't understand why they're being left, because they never normally are, and that then again triggers the anxiety side of things. So again, just because you're at home all day with your dog doesn't mean they're not going to develop separation anxiety, because they're just not learning how to cope with being on their own. So we've got a lot of people, like I say, that are at home already, that are going to be at home at some point, that maybe are unwell at the moment. Some of them are just not working because they can't. Some of them are working from home, but we are there, okay? It means that we can spend more time with our dogs because we're not commuting. It means that we can interact with our dogs a lot more. So even if we are working, if our dog comes up and nudges us, you know, oh, hello, what are you doing? Quick stroke under the table, carry on what you're doing again. We can be part of our dog's lives much more while we are at home. So we've got a lot of people suddenly at home. Dogs are loving it. Dogs are thinking this is brilliant. There's you know, a few things going around on Facebook, little humorous things that are saying it's crap time for us, but actually for our dogs they think it's all their Christmases come at once, because they're getting everyone at home and it's brilliant. But actually in the long term it's not ideal, because all of a sudden everyone's going to have to go back to work, back to school, back to college, whatever it might be, and our dogs are going to suddenly think, well, this is really weird, what's going on, I don't know what this means, I don't know how to cope, and I'm going to be stressed. And then because we are back in work or school, we're not going to have the opportunity to help them straight away. They'll have to wait till the weekend, for example, if we get a weekend, some of us. So we want to be preventing the separation anxieties from starting in the first place. So that's what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to give you a few tools that you can be putting into place from this point on to help your dogs, okay? It's for anyone that is in the household that has anything to do with your dog whatsoever, and it doesn't mean you're not going to spend any time with your dog. I don't want you to spend time with your dog. It just means that at key times we're just going to change what we're doing ever so slightly. But it does then mean that when you're spending quality time with your dog, it's extra quality time, because it means even more to you and your dog, okay? So I've got a list of things that we're going to be doing. One of the first things that I want you to have a little try of is to have some periods of time where you switch off from your dog. So right now I've got two dogs here. I've got Merlin on the sofa next to me over there, and I've got Ripley in front of me on a bed, and they're both pretty much snoozing, to be fair. I'm not interacting with them whatsoever, okay? That's why they're not attached to me. That's why they're not trying to get my attention, because I'm not actually interacting with them at all. It's called proactive ignoring. It's where we switch off from our dogs and give them no attention. It is really hard to do, okay? So don't think, well, what's wrong with me? Why can't I do this? It is hard. Our dogs are part of our family. They're part of our lives. And I'm asking you to spend a few minutes completely ignoring them, okay? So it isn't easy to do. Help each other out. If there's more than one person at home, help each other. Set a time, think, right, okay, let's spend some time just completely switching off. Favourite programmes come on TV, so let's spend between the start of the programme and the first advert break completely switched off from our dogs. If they wander in with a toy and start having to play with it, don't ask them what they've got, don't say, oh, that's nice, aren't you clever? If they come and sit on the floor on the bed next to us, you haven't then got to go, oh, hello, and give them a fuss. Just ignore them, just let them come and do what they're doing. So actually spending some time where you completely switch off, you don't talk to them at all, you don't look at them, you're not touching them, you're not doing anything at all, okay? No interaction. So set yourself a little period of time when you're actually doing something else anyway, and that way you can help each other. So there's more than one of you at the home, check what the other ones are doing, okay? So if you're doing your period of ignoring and one person's actually stopped to look what the dog's doing, oi, you're supposed to be ignoring them, watch the telly, read a book, you know, do something else. You need to be in the same room, by the way. So, continuing. So time away from your dog, switching off from them, get used to switching off and having some time where you're not interacting with your dog. It does take a bit of practice, it is quite hard to do, but it will help you in the long run, okay? We're then going to start applying the switching off from your dog to specific key times. So for example, when you next need to leave the house and you need to leave your dog at home, so say you need to go and get your grocery shopping, or it might be you are still at work at the moment, or your reduced hours, start switching off from your dog, okay? So before you're leaving and you know you're getting ready to go out, switch off from that point until you actually leave the house. If you need to say goodbye to your dog, do it before you start doing your switching off, okay? So as you know you're going to be leaving and you're thinking, yeah, I'm going in a few minutes time, say goodbye to your dog, tell them you're going out in a few minutes, switch off, get your shoes on, do your coat, put stuff in your bag, whatever you normally do, lock the doors, shut doors off from your dog, and then just leave the house, okay? Don't check, because what they're going to be doing, they're going to be absolutely fine. What you're then doing is putting a little bit of a break between you and your dog and the close bond that you've got, and the fact that there'll suddenly be a door in between you and your dog, okay? So it's not quite such a big shock to the system. If you've had a big fuss with your dog, oh hello, yes, I'm going to be back soon, don't you worry, and then suddenly you've gone, the door shuts, it's quite a big contrast and it can confuse your dog, okay? So getting into the habit of switching off before you leave, even just a couple of minutes, is something, all right? Same as when you first come home, when we first get in, it's lovely to have a greeting from our dogs, it makes us feel really wanted, but it isn't ideal. A lot of that can be relief from dogs, not always, but in a lot of cases, especially if they have got separation issues. So actually when you come home, if you can come in, brace yourself ready, especially if you've got a dog that jumps at you because they need to come and see you. Brace yourself, come in the door, try not to look at your dog at all or say anything, turn and shut the door behind you. If you normally come home and let your dog straight out, do that. Go back to the back door, open the door, go out with your dog if that helps them to get outside, but they don't need to have any kind of announcement that you're home, because they can see that and they know what they're doing outside by now, I would have thought as well. If they're young dogs, then you might need to remind them, but most of the time they're pretty clued up. And then once they've done that, that's a good time to then say your hellos. You're away from the front door, so it's a lot safer and everything will be that little bit calmer, okay? It means then that you're practicing the switching off and that your dogs aren't anticipating the big greeting when you first get home, and that helps them to just switch off a little bit more themselves. We want them to just be sleeping when we go out. We don't want them pacing the floor thinking, oh, they'll be back soon, they'll be back soon. So let them think, actually, yeah, when they come home, nothing exciting happens. We're going to stay nice and chilled out. It's much better for your dog in the long run. So a little bit of practice with the switching off, and then start applying it to when you're going to be leaving a dog or you're returning to your dog. So it might be when you first come downstairs in the morning, just a little bit of switching off, open the door for them, let them go to the toilet, and then you can then have your morning hellos and get on with what you're doing from there. I've got notes, so many things to remember for this. I've got lots and lots of lovely notes. So something that might sound a little bit weird, but a lot of dogs that have separation issues, actually the separation issues start when you're still in the house, okay? They are often dogs that can't be away from you for any period of time. Now, I don't mean just that your dog has to see what you're doing because they're nosy. I've got two very nosy dogs. If I leave this room and go somewhere else, they have to follow me. They have to see what I'm doing. That's just them wanting to know what I'm doing and that they're not missing out on something. However, you also have dogs that like to pretty much be inside your clothing with you and cannot be apart from you for any period of time. So if you're in the room with them, they are with you, they are part of you. So it could be that they end up laying alongside you so that they're touching your leg. They might be sitting with one bum cheek on your feet. They might be laying underneath your legs, depending on where you are. If you want to sit on a chair, they might be sitting under the chair. They might be across the back of you somewhere, but there will be normally some contact if they can get it somewhere, okay? It might not look obvious, it might not look like they're paying any attention to you, but actually they are attached to you. And if they can't cope with being in the same room and not being attached, then imagine how hard it is when they finally can't see you because you're out and there's a door in between where they are and where you are. So it's a big, big contrast again. So what you can start doing is, if your dog does suddenly come wandering over and just sits on your feet, or they start leaning on your leg, then if you just move, don't say anything to them, not telling them off, if you just move your leg slightly over, or just move your foot out from under their bum and just put it to one side slightly, separation anxiety dogs often will then try and shuffle up a bit closer and try and repeat it. So then you repeat what you're doing. You might end up bringing your foot out from under their bum and putting it here. then they move, so you put it there somewhere and you end up sitting in quite weird sort of positions. But try not to say anything, and eventually your dog will just give up and sort of sit near you rather than touching you, which is great. Okay, then you can carry on with what you're doing. The difference is, if your dog is doing something over there, they've wandered off to go and sit on another bed, they're looking at something, they've gone to get a quick drink, you can then call them to you. So if you want to then go, come over here, come and get a fuss, get up on your lap, come and sit next to you, come and sit on your feet, whatever it might be, you inviting them is very, very different. And so that is a really good thing to be doing. That is absolutely fine. Okay, and you can have that one-on-one time with them then. But if they are constantly touching and leaning on you, you need to spend a little bit of time just being slightly separate so they can just be with you without being part of you. Okay, so that's something else to have a bit of a practice of. And we're just trying to put in some stages that stops them from getting too used to being part of your life 24/7, basically. Okay, so helping your dog out. So it might seem like a weird one, but it does make quite a big difference for a lot of dogs. There is another thing you can be doing, which is have some times where, not just where you're switching off from your dog, but where they can't actually get to you. So it might be that you've got babies up around baby gates up around the house. We've got baby gates around our house, which just makes life a little bit easier. Things like, we've got 2 entire dogs here, so it makes it easier when Ripley's in season. But having baby gates or doors that you can shut, or ways that you can be completely away from your dog and they can't reach you, is another good thing to put into place, because it helps them to understand that actually they will then be reunited with you. It's not the end of the world, it's fine, and that just chilling out is the way to get you back. So for example, you might just shut the baby gate for a second, and your dog kind of just looks at you, and then you just open the baby gate and get on with your day. You haven't got to say, oh, it's okay, you can come in now. Just make it very, very normal. Make it very matter of fact. It's not an exciting thing. The gate happened to open again. Brilliant. And let them come back in again. It might be the same for the door. You might literally just go into your bedroom, close the door for literally half a second, open it, come back out and get on with your day again. Doesn't mean anything. And you can gradually then build that time up a little bit more. Your dogs just need to learn that actually being apart from you isn't the end of the world, and that you will return. Pretty much most of the time. So if you have an open plan house or an open plan flat, normally there'd be some way of getting away from your dogs, or even if it's just putting the shower curtain across, or just closing the door when you use the toilet, which might sound odd and it sounds gross, but so many of us dog owners tend to have the door open when we shower or go to use the loo or something like that, because it's just us and our dogs, so does it matter? But actually it's a really good opportunity to have something separate between us and our dogs and help them get used to the fact they can't always be with us. That's a really good time. So any time that you can shut a door, it doesn't have to be for long at first, especially if they've never been used to it before. It's a really good time to start doing it just for a second, and then open it back up again before they get too stressed and are worried. And then when you find that you can shut it for a couple of seconds and they just kind of go, oh, you could try doing it for a little bit longer and a little bit longer, but just get into the habit of doing that. It might just be you're literally going out the room to go and get a drink and come back again. Close the door, go and get your drink, come back to your dog. It might be that you've been gone a minute, but actually it's a good chance for your dog to learn that you don't need to come with you all the time. It might be you need to go out in the garden for something. You could just shut the door just for 30 seconds, and then you can let your dog out after that. So again, a little bit of time just where they are completely separate from you. We can get into the habit of the switching off from our dogs. There are 3 main elements of this. It is called proactive ignoring. It's how dogs communicate with each other. So if you've ever seen, if you've got more than one dog in the household and you watch them interact, or if you've got a puppy that's come into the household, or if you're a breeder perhaps and you've got mother and puppy in there, you'll see that they do a lot of turning away to give signals that they're not interested in something, or that actually, no, you're getting on my nerves now, I'm going to look away, I'm not happy with you. And they do a lot of these body language. So it's called separation. It's called proactive ignoring, and it's 3 main elements, which is no eye contact, no touching, and no talking. Okay, and one of those 3 things is always going to be what each person finds the most difficult. So for me, it's looking at the dogs. For John, it's talking to them. So everyone's got something. But no touching, no eye contact, no talking to your dog. So what that means, when you're practicing switching off from your dog, it means don't look at them. So not sitting there to sort of see what they're doing and checking if they are looking back at you, because eye contact is a green light, it is interaction, it is feedback. No talking to your dog, so that would be just literally, oh, what are you doing? But it also means don't say, I'm not allowed to talk to you, I'm ignoring you. Because you're not. Now, if you were trying to ignore another person and you said, I'm just ignoring you now, then they know what that means. When you say it to your dog, they're getting feedback, they're getting attention from you while you say it. So from your dog's point of view, you are actually paying them more attention than when you were before. So don't tell them you're ignoring, just do the switching off. They will see that you're ignoring, okay? So don't say anything to them. Try not to laugh if they're doing something bizarre when you're trying to do the switching off side of things. Just try and not make any contact with them whatsoever. Now the third one is no touching. So that is no stroking, no pushing away. And again, can be quite a difficult one depending on the size of your dog and what they're like. So if you're trying to switch off and you're sitting down and then suddenly your dog's trying to climb all over you, that's a really hard one because obviously they're touching you. Ideally, if they're on your lap, if you can try and kind of stand up, that's really good because then they'll get back onto the floor again and you can switch off. You could sit down and just have your legs crossed and just sort of bring your arms into play a little bit so that there's no room for your dog to get on your lap, or you could be standing up and doing something in there instead. No stroking them as you walk past them because you're still touching them then. And ideally, if they do sort of jump up here, you don't want to be actually pushing them because you're touching them again. You just want to kind of sort of shift yourself so they come off you of their own accord. So it's no eye contact, no touching, no talking. Make a note of those three things and pay attention to what you're doing with your dog when you're supposed to be switching off from them. If you've got other people in the household again, just make sure that everyone is doing the same thing and they are helping each other out, okay? Not so applicable now, but certainly once we are back to normal, visitors coming around need to ideally do the same thing as well. So if you say to them, please don't talk to my dog when you first come in, tell them, don't look at them, don't talk to them, don't touch them, because people struggle with knowing how to ignore in a canine sense. We can do it for humans, but not too good for doing it with dogs, okay? So no eye contact, no touching, no talking, all right? On the flip side, we're doing lots of switching off from our dogs. We can also add in the quality time that I mentioned near the start. So that just means that when you then are doing something with your dog, give them your undivided attention. So if you're working from home, spend some time working without interacting with your dog, and then when you have a break from work, you can then devote your time to your dog and give them your full attention, which is so much better for you and your dog anyway. So whether it's that you're doing an interactive toy together, or it might be that you're playing something, you're doing a bit of scent work, you're doing a bit of training or grooming, you're doing a massage, whatever it might be you're doing with your dog, you can then give them undivided attention for however long it might be. It might be 5 minutes, but it's 5 minutes with you and your dog, and you're not on your phone and you're not watching TV, but it's quality time, okay? And that really will mean so much more to your dog. It builds the bond better and your relationship better, especially if you've got a new dog that's not been in your home for a huge amount of time, or a new puppy. So that nice bit of time that's just you and your dog is absolutely brilliant. Again, if you've got more people in the home, have quality time individually. So every member of the home have some time with the dog. If you've got more than one dog, spend time with each dog individually. Yeah, have a bit of quality time. It really does make a huge difference to their focus, and like I say, to the bond that you have with your dog. It's great. Something else you can do, and you can start getting your dogs used to from now, is when you do go out, is to give them slightly less freedom. And what I mean by freedom isn't that you leave the door open, is that you actually close off areas of the house from your dog that they don't need to go into. Now, dogs, we want them to be settled when you go out. They don't need a lot of space. They just need a bit of room to maybe stretch their legs, maybe go and get themselves a drink or something during the day when we're not there, but they don't need to have lots and lots and lots of room. So if you've got lots of doors that your dog can go in and out of other rooms, you're giving your dog a lot more space to think about and a lot more space to have to worry about whether there's anything they need to be doing with it. By closing off doors and baby gates and making sure that there is less space for them, so maybe they are in 1 or 2 rooms rather than the whole house, you're you're giving them less to think about, less to worry about, and actually it can help them switch off a little bit more. So just getting into the habit of closing rooms off from your dog rooms that they don't need, you know, don't need to be in. So we let ours have run of the lounge, hallway and the kitchen as well, but all the other doors are all closed. They don't get to go to the conservatory or the bedrooms or the bathroom because there's not really any reason to be in there. And they spend most of their time in either the lounge, or Ripley sometimes goes in the kitchen. I know this because I've got cameras so I can check on them, and they are just sleeping. They're not doing anything else when we're not here. So switching off a bit of space from your dog so they don't have full access to the house makes a difference. And then the areas that you do leave them in, make sure it's nice for them. You know, if you tend to leave your dog in the kitchen when you go out just in case, people often do in case they have an accident, make sure there's somewhere for your dog to be comfortable in the kitchen. Have they got a bed in there? If they're crate trained, have they got a nice crate set up in there that they can go into? Are they right by, you know, if they've got a bed that's right next to the door so that when the post comes or someone knocks on the door, it's going to be right where your dog is laying, because that's not overly relaxing for them. So maybe put a bed somewhere further down the room. You could have a radio on for them so they don't hear so much outside noise, and that helps them just to get used to what's going on in the house. You know, making the area that they are staying in as pleasant as you possibly can so that they can just relax, chill out when you're not there. Another thing is, this is more if you've got more than one person in the house. So if you're doing some work where you're leaving the room, coming back, getting your dog used to you not being in the same room, or you are needing to go out completely, whoever's still back at home needs to not reassure your dog. Okay, now what I mean, doesn't mean they can't talk to them. If you go out and your dog kind of goes, oh, you've gone, oh well, and just chills out next to the person that's still there, that's cool, that's fine. Person that's still there, they can stroke them, they can talk to them. If the dog then wants to do a bit of game, they can play, whatever it might be. However, if you go out and you've got someone still at home and your dog is then at the front door and they're pacing and they're whining and they're trying to get out and they're stressing and they're coming back to the person that's still home and then going to check the door again, then your dog is showing separation anxiety to you. It might be you specifically, or it might just be that a member of their household has gone. If then the person in the house then, oh, it's all right, oh, come on, they're coming home, you come and sit with me, you'll be fine, then actually they're highlighting the fact that you're not there and that there is something weird going on, and that can then cause more separation issues for your dog even more. So ideally, if your dog stresses, then that tells us that you need to still do a little bit of work with your dog, but also the person that is still at home, they could interrupt, they could make a bit of noise to see if they get your dog's attention off of what they were doing. They could try going out in the back garden, see if they want to go outside. They could maybe get an interactive toy with some food in it and put that down to see if your dog will eat that. So going on to interactive toys and things with food in for your dogs, it might seem like a good idea to give your dog some food for when you go out to keep them busy. A lot of dogs, when they are stressed and when they're anxious, aren't going to eat. So you might then find that you come home and find that whatever it is you left them is still there, and then they may well dive on it once you get home. But it's not going to give them much to do when you've gone out, because actually they're too worried to eat. So it could be that if someone tries to give your dog something like an interactive toy when you go out but they're still home, your dog might not be interested, but in that case you could maybe try putting it down before you go out, so then your dog's got something to do to busy themselves, get their mind busy before you've actually gone out. That can sometimes help. Again, making sure everything's nice and calm, making sure that you switch off from them before you even leave the house, so several minutes before if you can do. And actually the person that's still there, they could be doing something with your dog when you're going out, so they could be having a bit of a game with them or doing something with them. But what you don't want that person to be doing is you know, oh, they're coming back, it's okay, don't worry, because it just highlights that something's changed, something weird's going on, and actually can make problems much, much worse. They're much better off just switching off for a bit, or seeing if they can interrupt it somehow, and then giving your dog something else to think about if they can, where possible. So if your dog already has separation anxiety, so you might be watching this and actually thinking, this sounds a bit like my dog already, or you may know that your dog has separation issues already. If you are at home, so you might now be working at home, or you might just be off at home because you can't work, or you're off of school, whatever it might be, now is a good time to start the work. Okay, you don't have to wait until you're going back to work again. You're at home more, so now's a great time to be putting work in. So if you have already had some help for separation anxiety, get your notes back out and start working on that. If you haven't had work on it before, you might need some specific advice for your situation, for your home life, for your dog, because certain breeds, certain ages, certain characteristics might be causing certain things. It might be that they've got other behaviours that tie in with it, or it might be that other things that are going on in the house actually need a little bit of other work as well. So now is the time to work with someone to get some separation anxiety help. There is a lot of help online, but just be aware of what you're reading, and if something doesn't sit right, doesn't feel right, it possibly isn't. But you can work with people. Obviously, at the minute we can't do in-person one-to-one training, but online works. You can do online separation anxiety training. A lot of it is talking people through things and showing people what to do. But actually from doing it this way, we can see what people's setups are, and we can kind of recommend, oh, okay, so you can use that area to do this in, and if you close that area off perhaps, and this would be really good for this. So it can still work online really, really nicely. But putting in the work that I've given you on this webinar already, putting those in place right now from this point onwards, is going to get your dog set up ready. And if they have got separation issues, getting these bits in place will help it not get any worse, and actually might start turning it around a little bit more, depending on how severe the anxiety is. So if it's at the point where literally you leave the house and they are just going insane for hours and hours and hours, then yeah, you might need to seek a little bit of help and get some specific work in place, and do it now. Don't wait until you know you're going back to work in a couple of days. While you're at home, you can do lots of little sessions throughout the day, and it actually means then there's less gaps in between, and because you're not then needing to leave your dog for many hours, and many hours for a dog that's stressed can still be 1 hour. That still feels like a long time for a dog. You can then, you're not putting your work backwards by suddenly then having to leave, and then your dog goes through stress again and puts them backwards. You can do it all. You can do a lot of stages and a lot of progression in 1 or 2 days, just from doing lots of little sessions basically. Okay, so have a watch through this again. I'm going to try and do like I did my other webinar for the puppy socialisation, and I'm going to just do you a little checklist of the things that I would like you to put into practice, so that in the description for this video there'll be a download. So it just means that you click on the link and it will take you to where it's stored online, and you can then take a screen grab or download it and then have it on your phone or print it out, however you see fit. Okay, because I realise there's a lot, just quite a long video, so there's a lot to remember, so you can then have the main bullet points just written down for you as well. Okay, so I do genuinely hope this helps a few people, and it helps a few more dogs. You know, as behaviourists and trainers, we don't want to see that your dogs are getting stressed. We would much rather put in the advice early and prevent the behaviours from happening. So if we can do that, if we can help just a couple of dogs, then it makes this time all that more worthwhile. So share this video with anyone that you think might benefit, so anyone that's at home with a dog, whether it's to do with what's going on at the moment or not, you know, share away, let them see it. It's not costing them anything, not costing you anything, so it might then help their dog in the long run. So thank you very much for watching. I hope this has been of use and it makes sense. I'm aware I talk quite fast. Please stay safe, look after yourselves, because your dogs need you to help look after them. Give your dogs a hug, and enjoy the rest of your time at home, if you have some time at home. Who knows? So, yep, signing off now. Thank you, take care, and goodbye.